Welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced, as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I'm your host tonight, and I have one other Infinity Bro with me that I've had with me the past 3 episodes reviewing Ahsoka. It's Zane Ellis.
Hello! Happy to be here. We're, having fun. A little bit of a change of pace on this one. We aren't waiting for 2 episodes to come out. We're getting on this one right away after just 1 episode,
So you just listened to, I'm assuming you're listening to these back to back to back. You just listened to an hour and 40-minute episode in episode 179 of the Infinity Bros podcast. That time is going to be significantly cut down for your sake in this episode.
Well, we hope.
We hope. Exactly. Although we could still talk about this show probably for a very, very long time, regardless of how many episodes we're covering. I think 5 and 6 so far have been the best episodes. Both 1 and 2, I feel like, episodes in this series so far. So to cover them both in one episode was kind of a tall task, honestly.
A little bit.
So we did the best we could, and we hit that 10-minute warning on our Zencaster recording, and we were like, "Oh gosh, we gotta hustle up and get this done." So it was worth it. Definitely always fun to chat with Zane about Ahsoka and Star Wars. Zane, it's been 3 episodes of Ahsoka together, reviewing episodes 1 and 2, 3 and 4. And 5 and 6, and here we are reviewing episode 7. What do you think of the series so far?
I'm loving it. Like, this is what was needed.
Mm-hmm.
Of everything that's going on in this, like, I feel like I'm getting more enjoyment out of watching Ahsoka than what I got watching the sequel trilogy of the new movies.
Wow.
I just feel like the story is better, the payoffs are better. Like, now granted, they're basic, you had the foundation of Clone Wars and Rebels, so, like, you're working from something, but, like, just in general, I feel like this has me set up in a more positive manner to, like, embrace and look forward to the future of Star Wars, and it's just, like, I didn't feel that with the sequel trilogy. And so I'm loving it. I'm really excited for it, because I think this is what's bringing us into that next future that we were told the sequel trilogy was going to do. But then I'm just like, we've said multiple times, in Filoni we trust. I'm just going to stick with Filoni. And, that's not to hate on the sequel trilogy. If you like those movies, that's fine. Like, they're enjoyable enough. But as I'm watching this and watching the story unfold in Ahsoka, it is far more of a compelling story than what we got through those 3 movies.
Amen to "In Filoni We Trust." We've been saying that through these last 3 review episodes of Ahsoka. The man has a plan, and I love that about him. We mentioned, I believe it was last episode of the Infinity Bros podcast, that there is a lot of material on Disney Plus that you can watch about Dave Filoni. Most recently, The Master and Apprentice. I don't even know what you call it. It's like a documentary mini-sode. It's only like 10 minutes long, I think. It's not that long. But it shows, kind of the behind-the-scenes making of Ahsoka. And Filoni is just, he's a master storyteller when it comes to Star Wars, guys. I've been touting this for a long time. Do I think Filoni could be the Kathleen Kennedy of Star Wars at this point? Yes. But I also don't want to rush him into that role, because Kevin Feige, we've been saying about the MCU that he was the guy, which he still is, but you see in Phase 4, you feel like the vision is just kind of starting to get lost. There's still really cool projects. We love the MCU, obviously. That's kind of our bread and butter here on the Infinity Bros podcast. But it's just not, it's not the same anymore. It's not all pointing to one end game, if you will. But it just feels different, and I don't want that to happen to Filoni. And with the way Disney Plus is pushing Star Wars and Marvel, these franchises, I feel like that's a possibility. So I kind of like that he's in this role of guiding these series, being the producer, being the director, the writer, of these series. That way he can kind of mold it a little bit more to his liking instead of being, corrupted by the whole...
The dark side?
The dark side. Yeah, exactly. But I think, I think at some point we will see Filoni kind of be grafted into that role eventually, because Kathleen Kennedy's not going to do it forever, right?
I hope not.
I don't know. I can't imagine she will. I hope not, yeah. You can't fault her for the things that she's done. She's given us a lot more Star Wars in the past 2 decades than we've ever gotten.
That's fair.
So that's great. But it seems like a lot of the Disney projects especially just have been hit and miss with people.
Right.
And I liked the sequel trilogy well enough as well. I'm not saying that it was the worst series of movies ever produced or anything like that. But it seemed to lack a certain finesse or magic that the original trilogy and even the prequel trilogy kind of had. Although, again, some really amazing things that happened in that trilogy still are, really fun to watch. So, and I'm actually rewatching a lot of these movies. I'm coming up to the sequel trilogy, so It'll be interesting to rewatch them and see, with all of this other Disney Plus content that we have out now, to see it kind of in the bigger, wider scope of the Star Wars universe, instead of just looking at the sequel trilogy, which at that time was pretty much all we had. But it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see where that leads. And I have to imagine that Filoni is going to eventually connect Ahsoka and some of these live-action TV projects to the sequel trilogy. Like, I don't think Filoni's a guy that's like, oh yeah, that sequel trilogy sucked. We're completely cutting that off from the canon of Star Wars. Like, I don't think he's that kind of guy. It'll be interesting to see how that happens and how people respond to it, because when Filoni confirms that and connects the sequel trilogy to his work, there's going to be some people online that will be very upset with that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But in Filoni we trust. Dude's got it all together at this point. Ahsoka has been incredible through the first 7 episodes, and we're looking forward to the finale next week. We actually have some feedback from our other Infinity Bros. Infinity Bro Mark has not quite caught up. I think he just said he got done finishing episode 6 this past week, and he is loving it. And he also made it well known that he has a lot to say about it and could talk for hours. So I'm hoping that he can catch up for us next week so we can have him on the finale review episode. Yeah, that would be awesome. So Mark, if you're listening, that's the goal. Power through so you can join us on that season finale episode. Infinity Bro Robbie, this is the one that I've thought is more interesting, because Mark, like us, is a Star Wars shill and will watch and love anything Star Wars that comes out. Robbie, on the other hand, is not. He is a very casual Star Wars fan. Him and Infinity Bro Max, and in the Infinity Bros, we're a cast of 6 rotating hosts, and him and Infinity Bro Max are casual Star Wars fans. They enjoy the content that comes out, but they're not diehards into, the extended, universe, legend stuff, all that good stuff. That's why I was very interested to see what Robbie thought of this. And he says he has watched through 5 episodes and he has loved it. So I'm very excited to hear about that. Very excited to hear more of his thoughts on that. If you guys have some thoughts about it, especially, this is why I was very interested to see specifically what Robbie and Max thought about it. They have not seen Clone Wars or Rebels. And I feel like this show has so many references to both of those shows that I'm very curious to see what people that have not seen those shows think of it. So it's very encouraging to know that Robbie has loved it through 5 episodes, which, you watch it through 5. Episode 5 is pretty much undoubtedly the best episode of this series so far. So he's seen the good stuff, and he has enjoyed it very much. And 6 too is a banger as well. If you guys have not seen Clone Wars or Rebels, let us know. Hit us up on theinfinitybros.com, any of our socials, or you can email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com. All right, Zane, let's get it going here.
It's fired up.
If you guys have not listened to the Infinity Bros podcast before, we have a special rating system. So let's explain that right here.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an Infinity Step.
And we are absolutely going to be spoiling all of Ahsoka, especially episode 7. So if you have not listened or watched, all of Ahsoka up to this point, this is your official spoiler warning.
This is...
Prepare yourself.
An Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler. Warning.
All right, Zane, episode 7. We got another banger on our hands here. I feel like after 5 and 6, you just can't go wrong after that. Like, everything has fallen into place from those episodes, and you're on this track. And it would be hard to deviate from that track or upset the train on that track. So what did you think overall? Just broad strokes at this point. We'll get into details. What did you think of episode 7?
Overall, I would say solid episode. Like, I think that's what part of it would come from. Like, you had all this epicness that we had from episodes 5 and 6. It's like, it's in the back of your head, like, how are you going to bring this home? Like, what are we going to do for these last 2 episodes? Because that's, something we kind of talked about last podcast, too. Or last episode. And, like, you kind of got the culmination of things, you're past, just them finding Ezra. You're past, you got Ahsoka there. Like, you kind of have that rebeating of your heroes, and then you also have some of that conflict. And so it's just like, it's slowly kind of pulling back the curtains a little bit more, because now you're just like, oh, what's Baylan doing? And like, it was fun because you had all this set up, you had all the introduction, you had all these cool moments, but then they're also like, all right, we're also going to go back to like what makes like Star Wars fun. We're going to have some fights. We're going to have some lightsaber fights. We're going to have some troopers coming in. This episode was like, we, kind of had some dialogue, set some stuff back up. But then like this episode was like, all right, we're going to get back to the action. Because there was a lot of action in this episode. And I feel like it kind of set up definitely more of what we're going to get for the finale. But very, very fun episode to watch. Again, very Star Wars in its nature. And, yeah, it just, everything about this series in general, it's been a lot of fun. This episode continued that.
I'm going to basically echo what you said. This definitely kind of felt like a setup episode for the finale, but that considered, I think there was still a lot of great content in this episode, and it did not leave me dissatisfied at all with it. Again, like, we got introduced to Ezra at the end of last episode. Getting him in it a bunch was fantastic. Eman Esfandi, great casting.
Oh, wonderful.
As Ezra. We'll talk about him in a little bit here, but yeah, everything about him in this episode was phenomenal. Absolutely loved him. Everything about this series, to me, has been satisfying. I wouldn't say that, like, every episode has completely knocked it out of the park. My mind is not blown every single episode, but I think that's okay. Like, go back to Andor. I mean, that first 4 episodes were still really good episodes, but they were slow. It was a burn, man. Like, you were just kind of sitting there waiting, like, all right, what's going on? What's going to happen? And then the last half of that season was just boom, 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 like just hitter after hitter. It was, I think that's okay to have a season like that, especially if you're building up to something bigger, which I definitely think is going to happen in episode 8 in the finale. I mean, we've talked about it. I don't actually know if they have confirmed or not if Ahsoka is getting a season 2, but we know that Filoni's got a movie, And we know that there are more series in the works. So more of the story is going to be told. That's why I'm like not worried about how this is ending, right? We've talked about these Marvel series and how they are kind of in themselves a little bit, and they only have 6 episodes, so they just don't have a lot of room to kind of set things up. They just are boom, 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 and then all of a sudden finale, and they have to make this big Marvel finale. And some of them just don't end up being satisfying conclusions in those series. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I do think it might not be a satisfying conclusion, but that's because there's going to be a big cliffhanger at the end of this season, at the end of episode 8. And I've said this on a previous episode, I think we're going to see the last scene is Thrawn getting back to the main Star Wars universe. Like, it's setting up Thrawn returning, and then either Ahsoka Season 2 or Filoni's movie. Maybe Thrawn's the big bad guy in Filoni's movie.
Right?
You know, there's something else out there. Not sure what that is at this point, and I'm excited for it, especially with how this season has gone. So, man, kudos to Filoni again. We're just Filoni shills on this podcast. Me and you are, anyways. Like, man, I was listening to the Scott Higa's podcast, The Christian Nerd, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not like I really like everything that Star Wars is doing, but I'm not like a Filoni's, you know, floating on the clouds type of guy." And I was like, wow, I guess we are Filoni.
You're right.
Floating on the clouds type of guys. Like, we're exactly that. We think everything he's doing has been fantastic.
Just embrace our role, you know?
Also, Scott has not seen Rebels, so that's in quotations, I think. I think Rebels is the best thing Filoni has ever done. Rebels is a phenomenal show. If you have not seen Rebels, you need to go watch that. And what are you doing if you're watching Ahsoka?
Yeah, seriously. What's wrong with you?
But, like, hey, welcome to the Star Wars. If you're watching Ahsoka and you haven't seen Rebels, we're happy that you're doing that. But now, go and watch Rebels. Because you've seen how good things can be. Now, you can see a true masterpiece in Rebels. So
that's right.
There you go. That's right. And Clone Wars as well, which also is fantastic. I would not say it's quite a fulfilling masterpiece as Rebels is, but man, that's last season of Clone Wars is such a banger.
It's very good.
It's so good. It's one of the best seasons in animation ever, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely go back and watch those if you haven't yet. Let's go back. We got a lot to talk about with Ahsoka. Go back to scene 1. We get C-3PO coming in to talk to the New Republic Council on behalf of Senator Leia Organa. I kind of actually wondered about that. Why is she a senator again? Because she was a general during the rebellion, and then all of a sudden she's a senator? I was like, wait a minute.
Well, I didn't think they said senator. I thought
they said senator. They definitely said senator.
I thought they said general.
And I was like, what is she a senator of? Because her planet is blown to smithereens.
But at the same time, is that just kind of one of those like novelty things? Like, do you ever really
maybe it's just
senator?
like right. Yeah, maybe it's just a title.
Right.
And they're not like super worried about what she's senator of.
Right. Just like that's just what. Oh yeah, that's just senator.
Either way, seeing 3PO walk in there and like they had like the classic Star Wars theme play when he walked in, that was so cool. Did you think it was a good decision to have 3PO stand in there like in lieu of Leia?
I mean, like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, I just, like, it didn't feel out of place. Like, it still was just, like, I think that's the kind of the point of some of those characters like that. It's just, like, you can just kind of insert them and be like, oh, yeah, that's a nod to the original. That's a nod to this. And it's just, like, and at the same time, even just in the story itself, that is kind of the point of those droids like that sometimes. Like, they're kind of stand-ins sometimes when someone...
Messengers type of roles, yeah.
So it would make sense.
Yeah, and like, especially going back to the original trilogy, C-3PO and R2-D2 used as messengers the
entire
trilogy.
time, right.
That's like what their main purpose in those
in
those movies. So yeah, I think it totally makes sense, but it's just interesting, you know, there's that big debate about like, hey, so we've got young Leia that we want to portray somehow. do you do that with live action actor, or do you kind of CGI their face to make them look more like a young version of Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, or do you just completely recast, use a different character? Where do you sit on that debate, Zane?
Like the de-aging, like as long as it looks good, it looks good. I think it more depends on this, like the role and what they're wanting done. Like if it's just a quick little thing, like it's like, all right, that wasn't necessary. But if like they want it to be more of a recurring thing, like I understand the ease of it, of like, hey, let's get the person, but like part of that too is like, especially with Carrie Fisher, like if you wanted to go that route, like you could bring in her daughter if you needed to. Or, you know, there are options around that, but at the same time...
And she didn't she play, Billy Lord is her name, didn't she play her stand-in in, like, Rogue One when they were, like, doing the CGI
I think
thing?
she was her stand-in, and I think she was also, like, a background character. I think is correct. But it's just, like, at the same time, too, is that really the route you want to, like... I mean, since Carrie Fisher's passed on... Like, I get doing it with Mark Hamill, because Mark Hamill's still alive. Like, I wonder if there's some degree of just like, hey, let's... Not that it's just like, it's fresh or anything, but like, I think you gotta weigh out the like, hey, let's let their memory, you know, go on. But at the same time, too, you can use some of that de-aging or the younger stuff. But I think for that, like you said, too, yeah, use her daughter as a stand-in if you need to. Or, yeah, use another, you know, actress that's just straight up portraying a younger version of that character. Mm-hmm. Like, as long as it fits the timeline and it still looks good and it's still, compelling to what the story's being done or needs to be done, then, yeah.
I think I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I'm not, like, completely pro or anti, using the de-aging or just complete, like, CGI face or whatever. Like, hey, if it looks good, like, do it either way. I do think it is kind of crazy how... Like, you see the side-by-side pics and, like, of the CGI'd young Luke and then the actor that is playing them in real life. Like, I was like, oh, gosh. You might as well just let that guy play him in real life because he looks so much like a young Mark Hamill that, like, all right, like, let's do that. And on Billy Lord, too, it's the same thing. Like, she looks so much like Carrie Fisher that's like, oh, I don't think that would bother me at all. Like, yeah, just let them play the character and let's go. And we already got, what's his name? Alden, the guy who played young Han in the Solo movie. Alden something Stein.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
But yeah, he did a fantastic job, like, portraying a young Harrison Ford and, like, all his mannerisms and everything like that. I thought he did a great job. Right. So, yeah. Let those guys go.
Or even, Grant's more of a minor character, but even the chick playing, was it Mon Mothma? She was a fantastic casting. Like, she looks exactly like the younger... Yeah. And it's just like, so there's definitely some precedence for doing that.
Well, and another one, I think it's Rogue One, where they did a bunch of CGI for Grand Moff Tarkin. Yeah. The guy that plays Grand Moff Tarkin looks so similar to the original actor that I was like, oh... Like, why? Why did you just let this guy play it? But either way, again, it didn't look bad, so why not?
Right, why not?
You could still do it. It's not going to change much, really, for the average watcher. Like, yeah, the crazy, toxic, hardcore Star Wars people are going to get upset, basically, however you do it. So, just do whatever you think looks best. And as long as you give those actors credit, like, I feel like that's the thing. Like, they look so much like them. They do so much work to portray them and their, likenesses, mannerisms, that I feel like those guys got to get some credit for that.
Right. For sure. I agree with that.
Anthony Daniels comes back to play C-3PO. Pretty awesome cameo. That was really fun to see C-3PO in live action. One really fun note, Chopper is, like, sitting in, like, the council room or whatever, and when that jerk Senator Giono, I think, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but he basically calls him a mere droid, I think is his words, and Chopper just like gets all huffy about it. It was awesome.
Have you seen some of the memes that are starting to come out about that?
Oh yeah.
Well, my favorite one is just like it's that picture of like Chopper sitting there, and granted there was just in attendance of like Hera's like trial or discussion or whatever,
right?
But like someone made it like a fake like headline of like breaking news, and it was like Chopper's finally put on trial for war crimes.
Yeah, for his war crimes. Yeah, I saw that one. Oh, it's so good. Just him sitting behind the like podium or whatever. Yeah, just it's so good. That whole part was really cool. How Leia sticks up for Hera and Carson Teva. This line kind of, maybe it was shoehorned in a little bit because it seems so out of place, but he's like, well, what about the Mandalorian conflict? And I was like, I love that you mentioned that. Kind of doesn't really make sense in this scenario right here, but I love that you're referencing that. Totally just out of the blue, just like, oh, okay, alrighty then. Anyways, that was a fun reference. I feel like for the Star Wars fans like us, we're gonna be like all in on that type of fan servicey quote, like
absolutely.
Give it to me, exactly.
Right.
But just kind of felt funny and out of place when he said it. Like, oh, all right then. Leia puts Senator Jono in his place, and Mon Mothma comes over and is like, hey, so obviously Leia is supporting you, but she didn't know what the mission was. So what was the mission actually? And then we cut to Peridia. Is that the planet?
Yeah, the planet. Yeah,
the planet
Peridia.
That they're on. We're in the other galaxy. We got to come up with a name for this other galaxy too, because I feel like I'm referencing this galaxy and the main galaxy. Blah blah. We'll have to come up with a name for that. But they're on Peridia. Baylan and Shin Hati are tracking down Ezra and Sabine. They finally find him. And this is a big shocker for me. Baylan is like, all right, there you go, Shin. There they are. I'm checking out. He just is like straight up leaving her. And I was like, with how the relationship, which we've talked about their kind of master apprentice relationship a lot over the past 3 review episodes that we've done. It just ends ? Because obviously I feel like there's more to the story. It's so weird that he's just like, all right, see ya. Like just lets her go. What did you think of that moment?
Well, I think it's more of the showing that like he has ulterior motives. Like, I mean, you knew that anyways from even just earlier episodes of him talking. Like, you knew that, like, he wasn't doing this because he wanted Thrawn back. He saw Thrawn as a means to an end. He saw Sabine as a means to an end. Like, so, like, he ultimately has some bigger role. But then I think that was kind of the point, too, of the conversation they have before, like, he sends her to fight. Just like, yeah, you belong in the Thrawn's new empire. Because, like, and I think that was kind of still a callback to that first fight before they left when, you know, she was going after Sabine, how he's just like, hey, you can't just let like, he knew, like, she's power hungry, that, like, she's, and I think that's kind of the point of that, of just like, no, you go join the Empire, go, you know, kill Ezra, Sabine, claim your prize, go to Thrawn, like, you will do great in that. Like, that's for you, but that's no longer, like, this is where our paths part ways, because, like, I'm not interested in just power.
I do get the sense that he cares about her. It's not like he's just casting her aside or whatever, but at the same time, I was kind of like, man, why didn't you just, like, help her fight them and then go? You know, like, why did he just, like, let her go do that herself? Especially, and granted, Baylan and Shin are not privy to the knowledge that Ahsoka is coming, right? Like, Thrawn, we talked about that last episode, Thrawn and Morgan Elsbeth are like, oh crap, Ahsoka's potentially here, you know, but they're not a part of that conversation. They don't know Ahsoka's coming. So they're thinking Sabine and Ezra. It is still interesting that he's like, she's got so much confidence in her that she can take them down by herself. And granted, not by herself, with the night troopers that they're sending for her support. But I was just like fascinated that Baylan's just like, oh yeah, you got this. It almost seemed like he didn't really care about her outcome. But at the same time, I was like, oh man, over the relationship that they've had, it definitely seems like he does care about her and her training and stuff like that. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out, especially with how it ended with Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka defeating the Night Troopers and Shin, and then she just runs off. That was unexpected, just a whole unexpected sequence of events there. Like, not the Ahsoka coming to rescue Sabine and Ezra, that was pretty much expected, but Baylan just like shoving Shin down the road and then Shin just leaving, because I almost thought she was going to stand there and fight Ahsoka and Ezra and just like fight to the death type of thing. Like, if I don't have Baylan, then I have nothing, so right. I'm just going to go for it. Why not? But then she just leaves and you're like, oh, okay, alrighty. Like, and I have to imagine that she is going to meet up with Baylan again in this next episode, because I don't think she can go back to Thrawn. Thrawn abandoned her. She knows that he doesn't care about her now. So I don't think she has anywhere else to go. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's kind of was the significant part of her turning and running away like she did. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that was her realization of like, wow, I'm actually am alone without Baylan. I think that was kind of more the weight of that specific scene, the realizing, because you could see that too, even looking at her when Thrawn all of a sudden is just like, all right, we were just here to buy time, bring the men back. Like, I think that's right. When it's probably more of a set in of like, wow, I am alone. And I think that gives power then when Ahsoka, was like, I can help you, like, come, because it's that feeling of like, oh, this person's alone. Like, and yeah. I think that's kind of the thought that Shin probably was immediately feeling, and like, yeah, that running there seems way more of the panic of like, I'm alone, like, what am I doing? Like, it's not, because I think that's part of it too. She's not just this hardened, like, oh, I'm gonna fight to the death. Like, I think that scene showed more of a, maybe there's more depth to her character, of like, there's more that can be done with her character.
Absolutely. And he just, before that too, I'm trying to look up the line here, but he said something to the effect of like, one last thing before you go, being impatient for victory leads to defeat. It was something like that. And I almost think like that had a pretty significant impact in that moment too. Like, she could have fought and tried to take them all down, but at the same time, maybe she was thinking like, hey, I could probably come back to this and take them down later if I come up with a better plan, type of thing. So that was kind of a significant moment as well, that he gave her that last piece of parting advice, and then she chose to run after that. And I was like, oh man, I wonder if he hadn't said that, if she would have tried to fight to the death, being so impatient to like take down. And it's kind of it's almost a trope at this point in Star Wars of the Padawan, oh man, I'm so powerful, right, like I can take these guys down, and being so eager to fight, and then they get easily defeated and humbled. So it definitely showed some growth, I feel like, for her to run away. Or, like, you almost thought for a second that she might even take up Ahsoka on that offer of joining them.
Right.
There's that moment of hesitation, and she's like, no idea what to do. And then she turns around and pieces out. But yeah, just very interesting. And Baylan Skoll continues to just intrigue me. I'm like, what is this guy up to? I don't know what he's up to, but I can't wait to find out what it is.
Right.
I love that guy. And even though this part was, I wouldn't call it a deviation of character, but it was something that I did not expect from him, because I thought that he would, and he, he's in it for himself. Like, this is a guy who has seen a lot of stuff in the galaxy. He has seen how things go. He is in it for his end goal, whatever that is. We still have zero clue what the heck he's going for. So the crazy thing is, we're going to learn what he's going for and probably see it in the next episode, I feel like. Because I don't think they would leave us on that type of cliffhanger with Baylan Skoll. I don't know. We'll have to see next episode how that pans out. But man, I'm so intrigued by this guy. I don't know what the heck, and it continues to be week after week just a tragic reminder that we're not getting Ray Stevenson back as Baylan Skoll. It's just so sad that he won't have another chance to play this character, because he did such a phenomenal job.
Right.
So good. A lot of cool things coming in the season finale with Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati. I think there's definitely a big chunk of the finale that they're going to play. But we finally get the reunion of Ahsoka with Sabine and Ezra. This was a really cool moment. Like, they've got the circle of, like, huts or whatever from these Nodi people that are just like chilling in their huts. That was actually a really cool, like, they're like a defensive people. They've got these huts and they just like clamp down when there's threats,
right.
And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And it kind of makes sense with, Ezra and how he's probably been living this whole time. Sabine, they come to this fight, and Sabine and Ezra are getting beat pretty good. They are pretty much cornered by Shin and the Night Troopers. And, they do some work. I'm not saying they're, like, beat for sure, but it definitely, you get the vibe that they're having a tough time. And Ezra, one thing that was very interesting was Sabine offers him his lightsaber back. He refuses it. Says, the Force is my ally. I don't need a weapon. And then 10 minutes later grabs one of the Night Troopers' blasters and starts blasting them. But I thought that was kind of a cool moment. Were you upset by that at all? Or does that make sense for Ezra's character?
Yeah, I think that's such like an Ezra move. Of just like, yeah, no, I'm going to fight with the Force. It's just, we've talked about the casting for that is so good, because I think he's crushing it as like,
he is absolutely crushing it.
And he just feels like it'd be an Ezra thing. Of like, oh, I don't have a lightsaber. All right, it's an older Ezra who's used to like using the Force now, and so now it's just like, yeah, we're just gonna use the Force on this one.
So
it's
cool.
just like, all right.
Well, not to mention, like, there's a bunch of Star Wars fans that are butthurt that he didn't take his lightsaber, and it's like, this dude has been without a lightsaber for 10 years.
Right?
Why would you think that he would just immediately grab his lightsaber in a fight and start like using it? That doesn't make sense at all from a logical standpoint. Like you said too, it's an Ezra thing. Like, now he's had 10 years to hone his Force skills and to be in tune with the Force, and you're telling me that you're upset that he just doesn't immediately revert back to like fighting and blasting and all this stuff. It's like, oh man, like, come on. I thought that was perfect. And like you said, we're going to talk about Eman Esfandi in a minute. But I did see they have these character posters that come out, for these different characters in Ahsoka. And they came out with one for Ezra, and they're sweet, by the way, obviously. They came out with one for Anakin Skywalker with his Clone Wars armor, and it was just like, oh, I need that one on my wall. That one's cool. Eman Esfandi in this Ezra Bridger poster has this, and you can kind of see it in this episode too. He's got this chainmail armor beneath his jacket, robe, whatever. And there's people speculating that this chainmail, and it looks like it too, is made up of dog tags. And he's been stranded on this planet with Thrawn for 10 years now. What else could it be but Night Trooper store like dog tags, right? Like, if that's the case, if it is dog tags.
I mean, it makes sense and it would fit in because like We also know that Ezra was a collector. Like, he was always collecting helmets.
Right, yeah.
But at the same time, like, when have we known stormtroopers to wear dog tags? Like,
yeah.
You know?
I know. It's kind of like a nitpicky thing, but I was just like, oh, that's really interesting. Especially with how, like, defensive he has seemed to have gotten over these 10 years. Like, it doesn't seem like he's just going and slaughtering, like, troops of night troopers. You know, like, that doesn't seem like the thing he'd be doing at this point, especially without a lightsaber, without a blaster, all that stuff. It was interesting. I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, that's really interesting. And you're right, though. He is a collector. So, like, if the night troopers had raided their village or whatever and he defeated them, he probably would have used every resource that he could to survive. So that totally makes sense. But it just is like, oh, okay, here he is, this, like, peaceful, like, nomad guy, and he's got just chainmail of dog tags across his chest. It's like, wow, it's a very interesting dichotomy.
Right.
But yeah, Eman Esfandi, man, this guy is cracking jokes like he's straight out of the animated series. One of my favorite moments from this whole episode is when they have them surrounded and Ezra's just like, wait, we can talk this out. I was just like, that's so Ezra. That's just hilarious. Like, they've been fighting and then all of a sudden he's like, break, we're surrounded. No, we can, I think we can work this out.
Hang on a second.
Wait a minute. Oh, I was like, you know, there's been some people commenting that this is out of character, and I was like, who are you kidding? Did you guys even watch Rebels? This is so Ezra.
Right.
That's why I continue to say that this show is like, if you had shown me the script, even just like listening to it, and I didn't see anything, I could totally see this as an animated show.
Oh yeah.
You know, like the script, the dialogue, everything about it seems like an animated show. It's just live action, and it's fantastic. I absolutely love it. But yeah, he was a great casting. There's nobody else that you could have seen as Ezra at this point. I mean, we've only had him for 2 episodes, but he's been perfect through 2 episodes. So he's even got the blue like contacts.
Yeah, it's
everything.
Perfect. Well done on the casting.
Ahsoka comes in, swoops in, saves the day. Some great action in that scene. I feel like that's something we have. I shouldn't say we're not missing it in this series. It is definitely story heavy series, so we're not getting quite as much action as we're probably used to in Star Wars. But this was a great action scene. Good to see the combination of, you know, blasters, Ezra using the Force, Ahsoka with her lightsabers. Overall, really fun to see. And Shin, one of the coolest moments in this episode as well is Ezra stopping Shin's lightsaber with the Force.
Yep.
That was really cool. She like just goes all out on him and he just like boom.
That was cool.
Just stops her in her tracks. And you can even see like the Force like warping the lightsaber a little bit.
That was a cool touch.
Oh, so cool. Like, they're doing a great job with the visuals in this. We mentioned a couple episodes ago about how Sabine maybe doesn't 100% match her animated counterpart. Has that perspective changed at all for you through the last 3 episodes or so? Do you feel like she is a spot-on representation of her Rebels counterpart?
I don't know if I'd necessarily say spot-on, but I think it's definitely gotten better. Like, I think it just... I don't know if it just took a little bit more to get in the groove of that, or in the beginning too, it was really story heavy with a lot of stuff going on. But I think it has grown on me more. Like I said, I wouldn't say it's spot on, but it's definitely closer to where I feel like it should be.
Yeah.
But I mean, it helps too now, like having Ezra back. Because, like, Ezra is so spot on. And then just the way Ezra and Sabine were together. And I feel like that has really kind of helped encapsulate that more, too, as well. Like, bring it along. Because it's just, like, a lot of how she was is how, like, in Rebels was how those two interacted. And I think that's kind of what... I don't want to say, like, that's what kind of got it back in sync. But, like, it it has more of that Rebels feel. Like, this is more natural than when she was on her own.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the more combat we see her in, the more she feels like her Rebels counterpart. I think, and this is a problem with a lot of animated people that we bring into live action, it's hard to match their energy, because like live action, it's hard to be that energetic all the time as animated characters are. So Sabine and even Ahsoka, really, it's kind of like you watch them and you're like, man, they're really a lot more reserved than they feel like in the animated series that they're in. But the more I see them in action, the more I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that totally makes sense. But as a live action character, you're just not moving around and having a super, animated bubbly voice all the time. Like, that's just not real life. I think you're right. The more I see her in it, the more she becomes like her animated version. So I think she's doing a good job, though. I like the actress that they picked for Sabine. She's doing a really good job. Really cool action scene that I feel like we've been waiting for in that scene for sure. So Shin runs off, and we finally get the Ahsoka Ezra reunion, and Ahsoka laughs for maybe the first time that I've heard in this series, and it sounded like Rosario Dawson almost like broke character, and that's like her real laugh. I was like, oh, that sounds like a real legitimate laugh. That does not sound like acting. That was kind of cool to see them actually reunited.
Right.
There's like this deep connection between Ahsoka and Ezra, because as far as we know, the last time they saw each other was in the World Between Worlds, right?
Yeah.
Ezra pulls Ahsoka out of the moment where she's fighting Vader, and then they get separated and go back to their kind of respective portals when the Emperor like flushes them out of the Worlds Between Worlds with his crazy force fire stuff. That's a wild episode. Yeah, it's really interesting that might be the last time they saw each other, and here we are on this normal planet in a normal setting. Reunited, and they're not fighting anybody.
Right, just so totally normal. Like, oh, okay.
Good reunion. Anyways, through all this, too, we get Thrawn, who's up there kind of like, he's playing the strategy game, which is so Thrawn of him. That's exactly what we're hoping for. He kind of says a lot of strategic words, all for it to end up being, oh, it was a distraction. And then they recalls his night troopers, and then gets done loading cargo, or they're not quite done yet, I think, by the end of the episode, but they're getting there. And this is another question I have. They're loading everything onto the Chimera. Are they going to fuse the Chimera to the Eye of Sion somehow? Like, how's that going to work?
I thought that was the whole reason why that Eye of Sion was like that, because...
Was like a ring?
Well, it's the ring, because, like, you remember, like, from Clone Wars, they have those jump rings for the fighters to jump into hyperspace.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think that's just... It's going to connect to the Chimera, and then the whole thing's going to jump back.
Right, yeah. That's what I, like, kind of put together in my head. But at the same time, I was like, they're loading everything onto Chimera. Are they just going to load everything onto the Eye of Sion? But that, like, totally makes sense, especially with the Jedi Starfighters and their jump rings, like you said.
Yeah.
That's gonna be wild to see.
Yeah, that's
the Chimera, just this gigantic Star Destroyer, get hooked up to this. And we've obviously seen the Eye of Sion quite a bit in this series, and that's gigantic as well, especially when you get Hera and the X-Wings like coming out of hyperspace right next to the Eye of Sion. It's so cool to see the just enormous scale of the Eye of Sion, and Hera and the X-Wing fighters are like, holy crap.
Right.
I don't even like know if we can do anything against this thing. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how they handle that. But anyways, Thrawn again doing his strategy thing. Did you think that was maybe me simplifying? But I was like, it's so funny that he had this like battlefield up. He was like plotting everything, sending the night troopers in at the very specific times, and then at the end he was kind of like, well, that's what I planned. It's all a distraction. And it was like, oh, okay. Well, You probably didn't need to do all that strategy stuff. If it was all just a distraction.
Well, I don't think it was as much just purely a distraction, because, like, what he says is, even after the loss, he's like, well, these are acceptable. So, like, I think he was looking like it was still an acceptable outcome, because ultimately, the ultimate goal was to buy the time. So it's just like, obviously, if they killed Ezra and like, that also would have been a fine outcome. But, like, and then that follows up his second line when he's talking about Ahsoka, like, paraphrasing or whatever, but he's saying, like, their most precious resource they have is time, and, like, they're running out of it.
They're out of it, yeah.
Right. And so,
some
like...
iconic Thrawn lines there.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
He did Lars Mikkelsen, chef's kiss.
But at the same time, it was still, like, that's a very Thrawn thing of just, like, hey, I preface that at the beginning of the episode when he's just like, hey, I'm going to let them have the path before them. Let Ahsoka make her move. Yeah. And then I'm going to be one step ahead. I think it's a combination,
too, of Thrawn mentioned, basically, in... It was probably episode 6. Well, it was episode 6, because that's when he made his debut, that if Baylan and Shin don't come back, that's fine. Like, and I think they did that to make him known as the threat that he is. Like, they made him seem very threatening and scary in that moment when he said that. But also, they kind of clued us into that plan, that, like, these guys are a distraction if we don't. And I think what was so cool in Rebels about Thrawn is that you had no idea what his plan was until he revealed it to you.
Right.
The plan is already complete, and then he tells you what happened, and he planned everything out. And in Rebels, you're just like,
right,
whoa, this guy, this guy is awesome. And he still is awesome. It's still everything that is involved in Thrawn in live action here has been fantastic. But I think that would have made it more of a weighted, moment, or made it seem cooler if they had not kind of let us know that was his plan in episode 6. But at the same time, it was pretty cool when he was like, yeah, I don't really care if they come back or not.
Right.
So.
Well, I think that was also part of it, because, like, I don't think you could have left that as a cliffhanger.
Right.
Or you couldn't have left that out in the open, because you needed that scene and everything to finish for what's set up of what we're getting in the finale. Because, like, you can't go back to that for the finale. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just like, you gotta show, all right, that's fine. Because, it's more than still showing that, all right, Thrawn's ultimate plan is getting off this world.
Yeah.
So, like, he doesn't, and again, it's same with Thrawn. Like, if he's leaving people behind, doesn't matter. If he's leaving troopers behind, doesn't matter. Like, hey, when we're got this stuff loaded, we're leaving.
The interesting part about Thrawn in this episode is that there's a variable that he did not foresee, and that was Baylan not being a part of that final battle. And he seems very interested by this. Not so much that he's going to stop his plan and, like, try to figure out why, but at the same time, you can see him pondering it, like, twice, where he's like, what the heck is Baylan doing?
Where's Baylan?
Yeah, where is he?
Right, because he even, like, mentions that twice.
Yeah.
Like, where's Baylan?
Right. Like you said, he says these are acceptable losses considering Baylan not being there.
Right.
Interesting. You wonder if Baylan were there. I mean, he would probably expect, hopefully, Sabine or Ezra to be killed if Baylan were a part of that fight. But he saw Ahsoka coming, but that's another variable that, was in that fight. So who knows? It's very interesting that Thrawn doesn't see that coming. Kind of it seems like he makes a mental note of it, and then he's like, all right, well, let's get going.
Right.
Man, Baylan just throwing off Thrawn, too.
Well, I think that kind of then, even to, like, when they got there, and then the Night Sisters were just like, oh, Jedi. And then the first time Thrawn meets him, how he has that conversation with Morgan Elsbeth of just, like, again, paraphrase, because I don't remember the exact line, but he basically was like, how can you trust the Jedi? And she's like, oh, well, says her reason for trusting him, and he's just like, well, I mean, he turned his back on a Jedi Order. You know what I mean? Like, he's already shown he's not trustworthy. Yeah. So I think it was already some of those suspicions of, like, all right, I gotta kind of be suspicious about this guy.
Mm-hmm. And I think Thrawn is a guy who is suspicious of everybody. He's like that. He doesn't trust anybody. He might show that he trusts you, but in his mind, he's waiting to see what moves he's going to make.
Right.
And I don't think does he ever fully trust anybody? That's a pretty interesting question because, and I haven't read any of the Thrawn books, but like he plays his part in the Empire very much to his liking.
Right.
You know, like he is not going to do anything that he does not want to do per se. Like it's going to benefit him if he does it. Yeah, I think he definitely just is that guy who he's just watching out for everybody. And Morgan Elsbeth is at this point just a pawn in this whole thing. Like she did the work to get the resources to him, and she's going to be discarded, thrown off the second they get back to the main universe, I feel like.
Right.
She's not going to be a main part of his whole scheme plan. So
right, no.
We're gearing up for the finale. Got any predictions? Or actually, before we get into finale talk here, what did you rate this episode on the Infinity Bros scale?
Like, this was just a good, fun episode. Like, it didn't have, like, the epicness of the last two. I give it a solid 5.5.
Yeah, I'm the same. 5.5. Really good episode. Didn't have like the epic moments of the previous two episodes, but yeah, it's still solid. And I feel like this is one of the best told stories that we've got in Star Wars live action. Definitely in Disney Plus. Like I loved Obi-Wan, but that story was a lot more choppy than Ahsoka has been, I feel like.
Right.
I mean, I absolutely adore Ewan McGregor, so I will give a 6 out of 6 to literally anything that he plays a part in Star Wars. So yeah, Obi-Wan is a 6 out of 6 for me, but there were a lot more things about that series that I had issues is even a strong word, like nitpicks about, you know. But this series has been just solid overall. Like everything about this series has been solid. I'm expecting that to continue in episode 8, the finale. But yeah, 5.5 out of 6 for me as well. So, okay, finale. We're going to spend just a couple minutes talking about what we think is going to happen here. Shin, what do you think is going to happen with Shin? Is she going to reunite with Baylan? Is she going to do her own thing? What's going to happen?
I don't even know where to go with that. It's all going to depend on what Baylan's mission is.
Yeah.
And what he's trying to accomplish. That is the part that I am the biggest mystery.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think... Because obviously, you got the two paths on that. Obviously, you know, what everything with Thrawn, because Thrawn's trying to get back. That has huge implications for the Star Wars universe. But I also feel like everything that Baylan's doing, like, this isn't just some small, like... I don't feel like this is being some setup of just like, oh, Baylan's just going to look for some old, ancient writing from a... I feel like he's doing this stuff because it has more weight. Because, he, you know, the whole time he's talked about, you know, hey, there's more to this than rescuing Thrawn. There's more stuff. Like, it's a new beginning, how he's, you know, talking to Shin about that. And, you know, he asked her, like, do you not feel the call? Like, there's something that's calling him there. So, like, I feel like there's so much more to that, which, I mean, obviously, I think Thrawn and everything is what, obviously, the big, like, because everyone knows Thrawn's, you know, this presence and everything. I think, I don't want to say a full okie doke, but I think what's going to end up kind of switching of whatever Baylan's looking for, whatever Baylan's doing, is going to have larger, like, recourse on everything that's happening.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like it's just kind of been one of those things that's strung along of like, oh yeah, Baylan has some other ulterior motive. He has something else. I feel like that's going to kind of be the twist in the finale of like, whatever Baylan's setting out to do is going to be huge.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be, because that's the only other, like, we have this path that this show has been on of Thrawn returning to the main universe. I mean, I feel like that's inevitable at this point. Like, he's going to come back. But that's the other thread that nobody has been able to figure out. Like, what the heck is Baylan up to? We just have no clue. And it's obviously important. They put a pretty significant emphasis on Baylan's storyline. I'm right there with you. Okay, so what do you think Baylan is up to? Like, what the heck is he chasing?
A big theory that I've seen a lot online, that, now granted, I don't have much weight of this because, like, this is EU stuff and, like, the extended everything. So, like, I don't know. But, like, the stuff I've read about it, of these theories, makes sense. So there's a lot of clamoring of people saying that perhaps what this call is, that's calling to Baylan from this other galaxy that brought him there in this whole new beginning, is this person called Abeloth. I believe I'm saying it right. And Abeloth, we don't actually see her, but basically what she is Abeloth is the mother of what we had in Clone Wars, you know, the son and the daughter of the light sides of the Force and then the father. She was the mother. But she, if I remember right, her story, like, she was actually mortal, but then because of the power of the Force and stuff, she became obsessed with immortality, and basically she turned corrupted and evil, and then they locked her inside of a planet. I think I'm kind of like scrunching all that way down, but that was kind of what I got from it. And so some people are saying that, like, she hasn't existed anywhere except the EU, but, like, we already know they're bringing stuff in from that, like, they're bringing from, like, why not?
Right.
You know, I don't think Filoni's one that's completely against doing that.
I don't think so at all. I think he's got a very broad view of Star Wars, and that, like, anything can be a part of, you know, this universe if we bring it into it. So I think you're onto something. But anyways, continue. Sorry. Yeah,
it's just kind of this whole, and that's the whole, like, sense of, like, oh, this could be a beginning, because, like, she's the one that, like, that's where it goes beyond Jedi and Sith. And, like, I've been doing some, like, light reading on, like, what her character is, and, like, and there's a lot of stuff that, like, I could see, like, the people that are saying these rumors, I'm like, I can see it. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of stuff that would line up right, and it still would fit. So, like, if you want homework, just go read up on Abeloth a little bit. But
yeah, you heard it here first on the Infinity Bros podcast. Zane thinks it's Abeloth, so if that happens next episode, we can say we told you so.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think the thing is, it's just as good of a theory as anybody else has, because we have zero inkling.
We got nothing.
We got absolutely nothing as to what this thing could be that is calling Baylan. So sure, yeah, why not? Sounds like a good theory to me. But yeah, I do want to point out too that episode 179 of the Infinity Bros podcast, you had a great theory that Darth Maul, or Maul, I guess he would be after he meets Baylan, if he were to, could have been Baylan's master, I guess, post Clone Wars, after he offers that kind of position to Ahsoka in the last season of Clone Wars. I love that theory, and I want that to be true. I don't really care to see, like, Darth Maul in live action again, but just to have the knowledge that that's where Baylan came from would be epic.
And that's what again, too, like, that's still that possibility of, like, everything that Baylan's saying, like, that was all the same stuff Maul was saying at the end, too.
Right.
So that's why it kind of had that realization of that last episode. I was just like, this is all the same stuff Maul was saying. So it's just like, did he get it from Maul? Or maybe, like, Maul was also hearing, you know, that's why I'm still just like, there could very easily be a tie into Maul here, because it's just like, we're getting tie-ins to everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be fun.
It would be
to
fun.
Tie
and
Maul back
like you're
this.
saying. So Maul, you especially watch the last, like, 3 episodes of the Clone Wars season 7, and he kind of has this vision of, like, yeah, there's this cycle of, like, the Empire rises, or, you know, empires, I should say, rise, they fall, a new one takes its place, it falls, like, it's just a cycle. And Baylan specifically mentions that in, I believe it's episode 6, when they're standing on the, maybe it's 5, I don't remember, when they're standing on the, like, tall building or whatever in Peridia, maybe. But anyways, like, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna break this cycle, which is basically the same vibes you got from Maul. I mean, I don't think Maul spelled that out specifically, but Maul knew kind of the scope of everything that was happening. He didn't know exactly how everything was going to go down, but he's like, I got to break this cycle, this whatever's going to happen. I got to break it. The same vibes we're getting from Baylan. So I think you're onto something, and I feel like this is it's got to be something big, because like, how do you break the rise and fall of empires? You can't do it by yourself or with a small group of leaders or rebellion, blah, blah, blah. It's got to be something like major and cosmic, right?
Right.
So I feel like Abeloth is a perfectly valid theory as to like what the heck Baylan is after. Because it's got to be something huge in the scope of the Star Wars universe. Again, we have zero clue as to what that could be.
Could be anything.
Could be literally anything. So, hey, there we go. Abeloth, episode 8, we're calling it now.
Yep.
There we go. Anything else you want to mention? What do you think is going to happen next week? I already have mentioned on previous episodes and this episode, I think it's going to end, this finale is going to end with Thrawn returning to the main Star Wars universe. And that's going to just be the threat of Thrawn looming. You know, the return of Thrawn. That's what we've been talking about basically this whole season, and what Ahsoka's kind of been trying to prevent happening. But I think that would be an epic way to end the season, lead into either Ahsoka season 2 or any other projects that Filoni is working on. Any other predictions or anything beyond that?
No, I think that sets up the most likely, probably like the safest bet. But it's just like, it literally could go anywhere. What are we going to get introduced in this finale? It's all on this episode. What are we going to get, you know?
Yeah. Who knows? Still a lot of unknowns for the season finale. I hope it's a long one. I hope we get like an hour at least. That would be nice. But we'll see what happens. I wonder if it's actually... Let me look that up quick on IMDb, see if it's already on there. Good episode, though, Zane. Thanks for joining me. It's been a blast, dude.
Absolutely. It's always a fun time.
If you are curious to hear our previous episodes, we've been talking about Ahsoka, reviewing every single episode through the last 3 episodes of the Infinity Bros podcast. So make sure you go back and check those out. No, there is no time currently on IMDb of how long this episode is. So we will find out.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you, listeners, wherever you're listening, however you're listening. Thank you so much for making us a part of your podcasting experience. If you want to check out the Infinity Bros, make sure you follow us on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Threads. I don't know, what other stuff. And you can check us out at theinfinitybros.com. Email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com. Zane, it's been a blast.
Always a fun time.
Hopefully you and all of our listeners will be joining us for the finale episode of Ahsoka next Tuesday, and a review following that on the Infinity Bros podcast. We love you, 3000.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at the Infinity Bros. Hey, you can also check out our website at theinfinitybros.com for links, reviews, and that sweet merch. Feel free to send listener feedback via social media or email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.